Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore, or good evening, I should say, if you're in the UK. We're here to celebrate the release of Mark Billingham's brand new book, Rabbit Hole. I've got the British copy here, strangely, and Barbara has the US galley right there. We should be getting our US copy soon, but we do have some signed, sorry, this camera's faking me out, some signed British copies of Rabbit Hole. I'll go ahead and put the link in the comments field if you'd like to order a copy. And our good friend, Karin Slaughter, fellow cat enthusiast, is here to do the program with Mark. And we still have some signed copies, or we're getting a new batch, I should say, of False Witness. And here you go, all signed stylishly in green pen.
Oh, I did sign that, yes.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll be monitoring the Facebook comments field. So if you have questions for Mark or Karin or Barbara, go ahead and put them in, and I will emerge from the darkness when Barbara summons me to ask any questions you might have. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to you, Barbara.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I never can decide if this makes me Merlin or Morgan Le Fay when I bring him out, but whatever. Mark has been a friend for many years. He's the author of 17 Tom Thorne series and 5 actually, standalones. I think it's so impressive. I love showing the backlist list in authors' books because it's just so cool. He's won various awards. My favorite. He's won the Sherlock Award for Best Detective Novel created by a British author. That seems almost oxymoronic, Mark.
Yeah. Hey, I don't care. I'll take it. You know, I'll take it. I'll take any old award, even if it's for table tennis or, you know, foosball. I don't care.
All right. Tell us what the Theakston Old Peculiar Award is, because you have been nominated for that. I think Karen's been nominated for that too.
Yeah, that's an award that's presented annually at the Harrogate Crime Writing Festival, which is sponsored by Theakston's Old Peculiar, which is a very famous British beer, and they sponsor the festival. And yeah, they give this award out every year, and I've been lucky enough to get that twice, and it's a good award because also the public are involved in choosing the winner. It's not just sort of 6 people sitting in a smoky room. Yeah, it's a very nice award to get.
And we should say Old Peculiar is the beer. It's not 2 of the qualifications.
No, although it helps if you are old and peculiar, because they just think that's good branding. And that's maybe why I won it.
Never won it. Yeah.
Theakston's Old Peculiar, because you're neither old nor peculiar, Karin.
Well, yeah.
It's a nice award and a very nice beer, I should say.
Well, and it is voted on by the public, though. That's really important because it's all the readers out there who love crime fiction. So it's kind of like the opposite of the Oscars. It's not, you know, just a handful of people. It's people who really love reading and who are just your audience, and they're great people. They're at Harrogate as well.
They are.
It always has a really interesting list of nominees. Few authors published in the UK and not the US we might not know, but it's very inclusive. I've often wondered, does it come with beer?
No, you come with, I mean, I wonder if you can actually see the awards. There's 2 of them behind me, those 2 barrels. You get you get a kind of handcrafted miniature barrel. And last weekend at the Harrogate Crime Writing Festival, which we were very happy to be able to put on again as a live event, it was just terrific. I got given a very special barrel. I got the Outstanding Contribution to Crime Fiction Award.
Brought by a Newfoundland, we should say. Brought by a Newfoundland with it under his chin. Yeah,
that would be good. You don't get that, but that, you know, that's a list that involves, you know, Colin Dexter and P.D. James and Ruth Grendel and Lee Child, and that's kind of a special. That barrel's downstairs. I go and polish that quite regularly.
It's a wonderful crime festival to attend. I have been to it a couple of times, and for those of you who are Agatha Christie fans, you might recognize that Harrogate is the place where, during Agatha's often discussed absence, no one's ever going to fully agree on why she disappeared, but we can all agree that she was found in Harrogate.
Not just at Harrogate, Barbara. She was found at the Old Swan Hotel, which is where the festival is held.
Exactly.
And if you're lucky, you can stay in the Agatha Christie suite, which is kind of spooky because there's lots of pictures of her everywhere, and the eyes follow you around the room in quite a strange way.
I've actually been to the Agatha Christie suite at the Para Palace Hotel and also in S1 in the hotel where she wrote Death on the Nile. So if you're a crime fiction fan, you can kind of do a pilgrimage of rooms that Agatha Christie stayed in and see if you can stay there too.
Well, this year we did there was a lot of Christie this year because it was 100 years.
Right.
100 years since Mysterious Affair at Styles, or I think. So it was, you know, a big Christie celebration.
We are delighted that Karin is going to be talking to Mark about Rabbit Hole, which I think is a great title, and is introducing a woman named Alice Armitage as kind of well, she is a police officer, but in dire circumstances. So Karin, I'm going to turn this over to you with the freedom to interrupt whenever I feel like it.
Well, we should say, as we're marking anniversaries, that this picture, Mark, you told me this was 12 years ago today.
12 years ago, this very day.
And that's Sarah Waters and me and you, and then our friend Mo Hader, also known as Claire Dunkel. So she's passed away recently.
Yeah, she died. She died a week ago.
And she talk about peculiar and wonderful, and one of my favorite writers in the entire world, and just one of the nicest, craziest people you could share all your anxieties with. And I actually sponsored her to come to America. Apparently, if you want to study or work in America and you apply for visas and things, you have to write a letter. And it was so tempting to talk about her necrophilia and, you know, all the horrible things she's done. But I pulled back from that. And when I told her, she said she was very disappointed because it would have been worth it not to be allowed ever in America for me to write that letter. Yeah. So we miss her very much. She had a wicked sense of humor, a beautiful daughter. And she's a great author. So Barbara, I'm sure you've got a lot of Mo Hader books there. I always say, if people think that I'm full on, the person who scares me is Mo Hader.
Oh. Listen, I can really believe that. Her first book was completely terrifying, but my favorite of all her books was the one she wrote about Nanking.
Oh, I agree.
Remember the title, but
The Devil in Nanking. Yeah.
It's been retitled worldwide now. When it was originally released, it was called Tokyo in the UK.
Yeah.
And The Devil of Nanking in the US, but now it's been retitled The Devil of Nanking, which is the title Mo wanted.
Yeah.
And I think it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, it really is. I just think it ought to have more prominence than
you'll never forget it.
Yeah, well, also more prominence in the literature of World War II, even though the Siege of Nanking was, I think, 1935. But nonetheless, the Japanese were really going at it earlier in the 30s than, well, before Pearl Harbor, let me put it that way. And I think that Mo just did a brilliant job. Karin, why in the world did she write that book? I mean, what was there about Nanking that interested her?
Well, she was an escort for, like, not a prostitute, but, you know, the escorts that make rich, powerful men feel like young women want to have sex with them, but they don't actually have sex with them. Hostess. Yeah. Well, yeah. And so she knew that life. And so I think that's really what she wanted to write about, but she loves secrets also. And that book is a big secret. And actually, you know, as much as I love it, Mark, Pig Island always reminds me of you. Always.
Oh, thanks
always. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, she just wrote about what she was interested in. And then, you know, she met Bob, her husband, because she had a character who was a diver working for the police. And but honestly, if you look at all of her books, you would just think this is someone who wrote about what they're interested in. Don't you think, Mark? And that she had a lot of varied interests.
She had a lot of varied interests, but she was obsessed and fascinated by death and by violence against women. Absolutely obsessed by it. She got very close to it on a number of occasions. And while she was working in Tokyo, her friend was brutally raped. She watched 3 people die. She watched 3 people die in really close succession, and a good friend was murdered. And she became completely obsessed with this and was fearless. I mean, absolutely fearless. And she'd get to the point in a book where most writers would go, "Okay, I'll stop. You know, I'll pull away," and she would just dive right in. The other thing to say about her that I think is really interesting is that she became quite reclusive towards the end of her life. She didn't enjoy this kind of thing. She absolutely wouldn't do it. And trying to get her to do an event was like trying to get B.A. Baracus onto a plane. You know, she would always go, oh, they don't want me, I'm rubbish at that. And, you know, she would say she was antisocial, but she was just actually very shy. And she had crippling stage fright. But when she did do events, I managed to get her to the BoucherCon at Baltimore. And she was kind of star of the show. She was absolutely sparkling. And she always was, but she didn't want to play that game. She hated doing it. You know, she just wanted the books to speak for her and to spend time with her family, you know.
Well, but remember her first tour in the US, she gets on the plane, and by the time she lands, someone has published a review. I don't remember where it was, that the book is too violent. You shouldn't be writing about this. So she lands and her tour has been completely canceled.
Right.
Remember that? And so she got a few days for free in New York with a friend of hers. But I mean, that's a pretty startling thing to have happen, especially considering the book is, I would say, not any more than Thomas Harris, Stephen King. You know, and part of the problem, I guess, is because she just looks so beautiful. You know, she was a model, she was waif-like, and, you know, I think it was very disturbing for a lot of men to think this woman I want to screw actually has more potential for violence than I do. And she knows a lot more about it than I do. So I think it was like a double-edged sword for her.
Either way, it's a real loss, and stupidly young, and from a hideous and horrible disease that moved way too quickly. And very, very sad. But anybody watching this who hasn't read Mo Hader, for God's sake, go out and treat yourself.
Yes.
Go read Birdman, which is her first book. Read Tokyo, Devil of Nanking. Read any of them. They're all amazing. They're amazing.
Pig Island, the Mark Billingham story.
Why, you're going to have to, why does Pig Island remind you of me?
The narrator reminds me of you. Because he's just like, you know, shit happens to him and he's like, well, now I have a tail. Great.
Okay.
You know?
Read that one. Read any of them, but read some Mo Hader. You won't be sorry. You'll thank us. As many
as you can. Her daughter needs it.
Okay.
So we should start now, Mark.
Okay.
I think we should talk a little bit about you, which I know you don't like to do. You can tell I just woke up from a nap. Yeah. So you and I have started around the same time. This is 22 for you, though.
Yeah.
I'm at 21. When you see that long list, Barbara was talking about, she's always impressed. I always think, fuck me, I cannot believe. Because it's like a ring in a tree. It's every year of your life.
Yeah.
And it's the entire page. So what do you think when you see that?
I mean, it makes me feel quite old, but that aside, those of us like you and I who are lucky enough to write full time, there's kind of no excuse not to. I mean, you know, there are so many writers who we both know who still hold down, you know, in inverted commas, proper jobs, who are working as teachers and doctors and in bars and whatever, who get up at 6 a.m. and write for 3 hours, then go and do a day's work and then write again when they come home. And they still manage to produce books. So those of us who have got nothing else to do but look out the window all day, it's no hardship. I would not know what to do if I didn't have a book coming out. No. And I'm very suspicious of those authors who will take 7 years to write a book. I'm thinking this better be the best goddamn book I've ever read, you know? So yeah, it's a book a year. And obviously we've been writing, you know, our first books both came out, 2001 or 2000,
yes.
2001?
Yeah, you did two in 1 year though, right?
Yeah. So, no, not really. Not really. I think.
Irish twins? You had some Irish twins?
Yeah, I don't know. But, you know, if after writing for 20 odd years, that page of, you know, previous publications had 3 books on it, then I'd be doing something quite tragically wrong.
Literature is what they call it.
That's
right. Are you involved in Save Our Books over there?
I'm a what?
So are you signed on to Save Our Books?
I don't know.
Oh, about the
What's
copyright?
That?
No.
Oh, yes, mind. No. Yeah. No, that's just starting to be a big thing here. I got buttonholed about that at Harrogate actually a week ago.
Yeah?
So yes.
So can you explain it a little bit? Because I know readers don't understand the nuts and bolts of this, but it's a pretty important thing.
You're going to have to explain it.
No, it's an English thing.
Well,
they want to take away your copyrights, basically.
Well,
right?
I don't think it's quite. I don't know enough about it, Karen. I had a 2-minute conversation with somebody, and I know it's something that I should probably be jumping up and down about. But actually, it hasn't made big headlines over here, even in the book press.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, we'll tell people to Google it. I'll move to my next question.
Okay.
So you're touring now? You're doing a theater thing? Like
No, I'm doing it. No, not really. I mean, Harrogate Festival, which happened last weekend, was the first live event virtually anybody there has done in a year and a half. And there still aren't two. I've got a couple more in the diary, a few creeping up in August and September. But the tour I was talking about before we went live is a theatre tour I'm doing with Richard Osman early next year, where the two of us, Richard Osman, who wrote Thursday Murder Club, the two of us are mates, and we just thought, let's have some fun. And we're doing a kind of comedy. It's more about two of us having fun, playing silly games, doing improv, telling jokes, whatever, doing a little 2-week theatre tour early next year.
Like Mike Diamond and Adam Horowitz, just taking the show on the road.
Just taking the show on the road and seeing what happens. Yeah.
Well, that's where you got your start, right? Is doing silly things in front of cameras and audiences.
Yeah. I mean, I thought I wanted to be an actor, and I did that for a few years. And then when that started to when I fell out of love with it, or it fell out of love with me, I'm not quite sure which was which, I drifted into stand-up comedy, which a lot of actors did at the time when they couldn't get enough work. Because there's not really much luck involved in stand-up comedy. You know, if you can do it, if you can get the laughs, they'll book you the next month, you know. And again, I did that for a long time until I started getting bored of sitting in grubby dressing rooms at 3 a.m. And then started writing, because I'd always, been devouring mystery fiction. I was like dipping my toe into the whole kind of crime fiction community just to get free books back then. I was reviewing writers and going to the festivals and the conventions and stuff, and thought, sod it, I'll have a go at writing one. And, and got lucky, and here we are.
So you're that annoying guy who was always hanging around and then becomes more successful.
I am that annoying guy. I am that annoying guy who said, I'm writing a book. And, writers would, but no, I mean, I remember, I so remember my first US tour. And everybody's so nice. I mean, you know what they're like. Most crime writers are so nice and welcoming and supportive. And just because there isn't that thing that there is in comedy, for example, there isn't that thing that, in order for me to do, if I'm going to do well, somebody else has to do badly. There isn't that. And the reason there isn't that is that crime readers read so voraciously, because they read your book. It doesn't mean they won't read my book or Michael Connolly's book or Lee Child. They'll read everybody's book because they read 6 books a week, So,
didn't you and I tour together on the West Coast?
Yeah, we did some stuff together because we were with the same publisher way back then.
Yeah, we were.
So we did some shows together. We showed up and showed off.
Got tens of people to come out.
Tens of people. So exciting. Oh yeah.
Did you go to college? I'm the first in my family to drop out of college, so I like to ask people that.
Yeah, I went to, well, I guess you're talking about what we call university, yeah?
Yes.
And I was the first person in my family to do so, to study, of all things, drama. I mean, I'm sure they'd have been much happier if I'd been studying medicine or engineering or
something practical.
Yeah. something that might be of some use. But no, I did a drama degree, which meant I spent 3 years pretending to be a tree and doing dance and wearing tights, all manner of nonsense. But you know what? I'm so glad I did. I mean, I think unless you are doing a vocational degree, like law or medicine, it's just about having 3 years of great fun and no responsibility before you.
So our friend Lee Child did law. Then he went into television.
Right.
So practical use of that.
Yeah, I'm sure he had a great time.
Yeah. Well, he just brings the party.
Yeah.
What's the first job you were fired from? I usually say, were you fired from a job? But I know these are great questions. Do you know what? I can honestly say I've never been fired, but that's because I've never had a proper job, Karin. I mean, the only thing approaching a job that I've ever had that hasn't been, acting, telling jokes, or writing books, is I worked for one summer as a cleaner at a holiday camp. We had this chain of holiday camps over here called Butlins. It's difficult to describe, kind of a real British institution. And they have a thing called redcoats, which are the entertainers, that put the shows on every night. And I thought that's what I was going to be. I thought they'd hired me as a redcoat, and this was going to be my launch pad into showbiz. And got there, and I was a cleaner, and it was the most miserable summer of my life. They had at that time the biggest bar in Europe, the longest bar in Europe, at this place called Minehead in Somerset.
and you literally, you'd stand at one end of the bar and you couldn't see the other end.
Oh.
And at the end of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, I had to carry all these ashtrays, these huge metal ashtrays, out into an alley and clean them with a power hose. And I'm just getting like covered in, it was the most miserable job. So I wasn't fired, but I kind of quit after about 3 months. And that's the only proper job I've ever had, really. Never been fired. Have you been fired?
I have put myself in a position where I have been such a terrible employee that I ended up hating the person for not firing me. It's like, why are you taking this shit off me? You know?
Right.
Right. So that was my MO. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that with my books, not on purpose. But yeah, I mean, but I worked in a movie theater. I was an exterminator. I painted houses.
When you say you painted houses, not in a kind of
no, I didn't murder people. No.
Okay, fine.
So when you were talking about Mo, I did think the joke she would appreciate is maybe Mo was killing all these people, right?
Yeah.
Because, you do wonder with some writers, especially some we know, if they are secretly serial killers, because it would make a lot of sense.
I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Yeah, yeah. So no, I painted houses, and I was with an all-woman crew, a feminist painting crew. And every time we went on a site, the men there were so horrible. And they would do things like they would piss in our paint cans or take a dump in them. Or this one guy, we had to paint this bathroom, and the night before he had urinated all over the walls. And so we went in and we started painting, and of course we smelled it. And we told on him, because we were like, we're not going to let this woman a year from now smell piss in her walls, because it's very hard to get out, because this guy. And so that guy who pissed on the walls got fired, and everybody hated us after that. So it's a real woman's story,
It's a cracking anecdote.
Yes. Yeah. We're the ones who can't take a joke.
Right.
It is, though, I don't drink, but it's the only time in my life that I drank was when I was painting. I think there's something in paint that makes you just crave alcohol.
Okay.
Or maybe it's because it's so rough on your body.
Okay.
But then I went into the sign business after that. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. But no, I didn't get fired. I did have a boss once say, I need to talk to you in the morning. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to quit.
I kind of like the way you phrased your question of what's the first job you were fired from. Like you thought there'd be plenty.
Yeah, I did. I really did.
No, it's never happened. Sorry to disappoint you.
Well, but you're like me. You're a hustler. You'll do any, right? I mean, you've really worked most of your life.
I do. Well, when I was a freelancer, when I was doing freelance writing kind of for TV and stuff, I would pretty much say yes to anything. Mm-hmm. And then, 2 weeks into a TV job, I'd absolutely be hating it. Working on these shows, like animation shows that are funded by like 8 different European countries. So you do a script, and then you have to get the notes back from the French, and the notes back from the Germans, and the notes back from the Latvians. And, after 8 weeks, when people are asking you to put back stuff you took out 8 drafts ago, you go, why this bears no resemblance to, whenever I dip my toe into television, it reminds me why I write books.
Yeah, it's collaborative. I hate that. I don't want to collaborate.
Collaborative is putting it politely. It can be writing by committee, which is sort of impossible. And once you have that sort of control that you have when you write a book. I remember when I was working with my editor on my first book, and she said to me, we were arguing about some line, and she said, well, it's up to you, Mark, it's your book. And I nearly fell off my chair. Honestly, I went, because nobody has ever said it's up to you, it's your script in the history of film or television. So to have that degree of control is something that's very hard to give up.
Yeah, absolutely. So my last question in this tranche is, so when people first meet you, and you tell them a writer, what kind of novels do they think, if they don't know who you are, what kind of novels do they think you write?
Well, I guess I don't give them time. I think I always just immediately, I don't say I'm a writer, I say I'm a crime writer, which quite often provokes that they think you're a kind of journalist, or they think that you're writing about crimes you've committed. A friend of mine tells this great story when he was doing an event in Glasgow. And some bloke just walked up and said, well, what are you doing? He was sitting there behind a pile of books. And he said, oh, I'm a crime writer. And the bloke went, oh, what have you done? And he was like, no, I haven't done anything. I haven't committed any crimes. I just write about them and fictional versions of them. And then, of course, people just want to tell you all the nasty stuff that that they've been involved with or that's happened to them, or ask you to write their story for them.
Right.
And quite often you get that snooty, oh, I don't read books like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah. I hate to tell you, like, have you read The Handmaid's Tale? That's dystopian.
Yes, yeah.
Have you read Great Gatsby? There's a murder.
Of course, there's several deaths in The Great Gatsby.
Yes. Yeah, you have to figure it out.
Yeah. In fact, I remember seeing a session at a literary convention once that basically this guy stood up and made his contention was that there wasn't a single great modern American crime novel that wasn't at some level that didn't have an act of violence in it. That's what he said. It didn't have an act of violence in it. And I remember somebody at that session going, "Excuse me, The Handmaid's Tale," and he went, "Rape," and they went, "Okay." And then every book people were suggesting, he was going, and your point is, he made a very convincing argument for violence being at the heart of most great literature.
I'm on board with it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to process.
Okay.
So our friend from this photograph, Sarah Waters, who's written some fantastic books. She said to me once that people always ask her where she gets her ideas, and she says she steals them. And she doesn't know how to answer people other than to say she steals them. So she just pretends like it's something magical.
Yeah.
Do you know? I don't know. I mean, I don't really remember where the kernel of something came from, except for Pretty Girls, because it was the first time in my life I took a narcotic because I had back pain and I had a fever dream, and it was Pretty Girls. That's the only time I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can remember where a few things came from, and it's something I was half listening to on the radio, or sometimes it's a couple of things that rattle around in your head and they collide and then spark off into something else.
Mm-hmm.
But often it's a tiny story you read in the newspaper, never a big story, just a little story that makes you go, "Hey, what?" That leaves you with questions, And then when I start the book, I still have those questions. I don't have everything planned out, and I will discover the answers to the questions at the same time that Tom Thorne will, and then the reader will, I know I've told you this story, Karin, but I was at a festival in Australia once on stage with a famous author who I better not name. Alice Sebold was who it was. And she got asked, where she got her idea for The Lovely Bones from. And she went all sort of kooky and, when I don't even know what an idea is. I just heard the character's voice and I channeled the voice. And I'm like, nah. I just don't subscribe to that kind of nonsense. I'm sorry. It's not a mystical thing. It's not, ideas don't descend on fairy dust. I'm like, if you get taken over by characters, who's doing the typing, for God's sake? Mm-hmm. You have an idea and then you make up a story. Yeah. It's nothing mystical. It's just a job. You put your backside in the chair and you go to work,
Yeah, I think I just forget. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Right?
I
mean,
I forget all kinds of things.
I'll talk about where the idea for Rabbit Hole came from when we get to that tranche question.
All right. So people always want to know where you write. I write in the mountains. Everybody should know that by now.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you write?
I write in this room, in this chair, at this desk. I can't write anywhere else. I mean, I have a notebook which I might carry around with me if I'm traveling. I can't write in a hotel room. I can't write on a train. I just can't do it. I don't know. I like to have all my crap around me. I'd like to have my spooky doll and, bits and bobs. So no, here literally is where I've written everything, pretty much.
You did this. The doll's on the other side though, Mark.
No, the doll's there.
No, it's on the other side. It moved.
Well, obviously I've got some kind of weird mirror thing. Oh, I see what you did. You're way ahead of me.
You didn't fall for it.
I did. Oh no, I nearly did.
You need some up dog.
You got me.
I'm
not going that far.
All right.
What do you take me for?
Other than this, what is the most embarrassing interview you've done? Mine was in a sauna in Finland in a towel. Top it.
No, I don't think I can top that. I had a strange interview in a mortuary in Germany once, where I just didn't want to be. But those crazy Germans.
Love a mortuary.
No, I've had so much. I guess my most embarrassing experience at any kind of book event, I think, was at a book event I did about 5 years ago in Northern Ireland. And the new book wasn't out for like a week or so, but they had samplers. So, these little sort of pamphlet size versions of the book. And I've got a pile with me for the event. And we got to the Q&A at the end, and I said, okay, anybody asks a really good question, I'll give you a free sample of the book. You know, how's that? And so questions come in, and a guy at the front went, oh, I really like your audiobooks. And I went, oh, thank you very much. And he said, you narrate them, don't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, tell me about that. So, you know, what's it like? So anyway, I answered his question, and I went, that's a great question. You get a sampler. And I reached down to the pile of samplers, and I picked it up, and he was sitting in the front row. So I just lobbed it at him. And as it left my hand in that sort of half second as it was flying through the air, I went, he's blind. That's why he likes the audiobooks. It's obvious to me now that he's blind, and it's too late and the book's in the air. And obviously he had no idea that I'd thrown a book at him, and it just kind of hit him. And oh my God, if I could, I just wanted to die. I still wake up screaming when I think about that.
I don't blame you. I'm not even going to address that. That's too hot to touch. I did, terrible. Though, Fidelis Morgan, who's a wonderful writer and has some great historical fiction. I'm sure Barbara has it in her shop. She was with me on a US tour, just happened to cross over, and I had laryngitis, and she said she would do the event for me. And she's amazing. She's like the Shakespearean trained actress. She was with like the troupe with Glenda Jones and Celia Emery, and she's amazing. And so we get to this Barnes and Noble, and there's 30 chairs and one person, right? And so I say, Fidelis will be reading. And so she's up there, and this guy has this look like, oh, I would just sat down with these bags because I was tired. And she gives him this stellar performance of my book. And he's just trapped there. And I was weeping. It was so hilarious to watch. So I guess what we're saying is we're very cruel. Both of us are very cruel people.
Very cruel. Very, very cruel.
What have you learned as a most valuable lesson about being successful?
Work hard and be lucky. I really think, I'm not being flippant. I mean, you know, I think an enormous amount of luck is involved in getting a book deal. We all know plenty of wonderful writers who've never had that bit of luck. Mm-hmm. And we all know writers who've had way too much luck and don't deserve it. But once you've had that bit of luck, you know, your manuscript lands on the desk of the right agent at the right time, and then they send it out to the right publisher at the right time, and you get your deal. You've got to take that luck and run with it. You know, you've got to work very hard. I think, you know, I'm a big believer in that expression, the harder I work, the luckier I seem to get. Because, you know, it is a business. You've got to treat writing like a business. You've got to remember that it is. But your role in that business is just to entertain readers. I write to be read. I've got no time at all for writers who say, I write for me and I write what I want and I don't care what the reader thinks. So I bloody do. I bloody care what the reader thinks. And when I'm writing, when I'm sitting here writing, there's a reader, which is kind of me, another version of me, looking over my shoulder as the words are appearing on the screen, imagining it being read, because a book only exists once it's read. It's written and then it's read. That's the kind of deal you make, the deal between the writer and the reader. So yeah, you know, you've just got to keep trying to give the best performance you can. And I do believe it's a performance, you know. Well,
I'm one of those assholes who doesn't think about my readers until the book's ready. Yeah, no, when the book's ready, then I think about, I mean, you do this, you have certain bookstores, certain countries you go to, and you know these readers. Yeah. And that's who I think about. I'm like, boy, I hope that they like this. You know, I've watched them come to these things.
Yeah, but you do think about the reader when you're writing the book, because I know you do. There's points when you'll write it. For example, you write something and you go, I know what they're going to think.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that because I've just read False Witness. I know, you know, like in it. Okay, without giving too much away, but there's a big twist right at the end of the first chapter, right? Mm-hmm. And you knew when you'd written that, you went, I know what they're going to think, and that they're going to get to that bit and go, holy, and you are thinking as a reader and about the reader while you're writing.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, because we are all readers first and foremost.
I guess a reader. Yeah.
Yeah, you are thinking of a reader, you know.
A yin to your yang.
Yeah.
What's the weirdest place you've ever toured?
Finland was quite weird, actually. You mentioned Finland. Finland was quite weird, and I ended up in some bizarre karaoke bar at 4 a.m. with the biggest, hairiest Finnish bloke you've ever. I mean, I'm not saying that they party hard, right? But there were a couple of Finns staying in this hotel, a couple of Finnish writers, and they were a father and daughter. Right, I'm not sure whether they wrote as a team or whether the father was the writer and the daughter was just staying with them. I can't remember. But at the end of their weekend in this hotel, the room had to be industrially cleaned. Now I have no idea what they were up to, but it was like they just didn't want to go to bed. They were absolute party animals. So yeah, Finland was quite a weird place to tour.
I love Finland.
Yeah, I mean, I like all of Scandinavia, but I couldn't. Finland was a bit hardcore for me.
Well, it's 3 o'clock and it's pitch dark, right?
Yeah.
Of course,
Iceland's great. You done Iceland?
Yeah.
Iceland, I absolutely adore. I challenge anybody to find somebody from Iceland who isn't lovely.
Mm-hmm.
I was having this argument, funny enough, with Ian Rankin last weekend. We were on a train for about 3 hours and we were talking about Canada for some reason. And I said, oh, Canadians are all so nice, aren't they? Can you think of a horrible Canadian? And he actually managed to. So I went, oh, okay, fine, strike that then. Iceland. Think of an Icelandic person who isn't nice. And he couldn't. Neither of us could. I mean, yeah, we've not met that many, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I'm just talking about all the Icelandic writers we know.
It's only like 300,000 total, right?
Right. So we've met we've probably met 10% of the Icelandic population, and they're all lovely. So there you go. Maybe
a Guinness Book of World Record thing.
Yeah.
What's the strangest question you've ever gotten?
That was it.
Okay, fair. So Rabbit Hole. Which I had a filthy joke I'm not going to tell.
Okay.
So you're writing from the point of view of a woman. And I have gone on record saying it seems like a lot of guys got a note from their agent saying, hey, write from a woman's perspective after Me Too. But you were doing it before then. And I think despite yourself, you're really good at writing from a woman's point of view. So why was this story told from a woman with Alice, the female character?
It was always going to be a woman. This was quite a personal book for me because I had both a close family member and my closest friend who had spent time on a ward like the fictional ward on which the book is set. And I'd been into that place and I just, Graham Greene used to talk about how all writers have a chip of ice at their heart and maybe crime writers have quite a big chip. Because even though quite a lot of the time it was painful and traumatic and upsetting, it was also very funny, darkly funny moments. But I just went, this would be the most perfect setting for a locked room mystery. This is kind of, I have to write this. And there were times when it was quite difficult to write because of my personal associations with it. But it was always going to be a woman. And, it's much easier for me to write about a middle-aged bloke because I am a middle-aged bloke. It's much more of a challenge to write from the point of view of a 12-year-old boy or a 95-year-old man, or in this case, a woman in her mid-30s who's from a very different part of the country than I am. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's the first book I've written completely in the first person. And if you're asking a reader to spend 400 pages, inside the head of one character, you've got to really do your best to make that character engaging. Not always likable, because she isn't. She's infuriating and stubborn and unreliable. Hugely unreliable, but I wanted to try and make her engaging. So I'm very happy I did it.
Well, one thing I think that people don't talk about is mental illness is a layer, right? So if you're an asshole and you have a mental illness, you're still an asshole. But if you're a nice person and you have a mental illness, you can still be an asshole, but underneath you're still a really good person, right? Yeah. And I thought you managed that separation well. I wanted to read one of your reviews from Amazon. I was intrigued by Rabbit Hole, particularly its setting, blah, blah, blah. It felt authentic, as were Alice's behaviors and thoughts. I don't think this book will be for everyone, but if you have an interest in mental health and crime fiction, you will probably enjoy this. 3 stars. 3. I don't even get that.
Oh, listen,
you start talking about review. 3 stars.
A friend of mine, a brilliant writer called Chris Brookmeyer, and I do a kind of late night rude show, X-rated show. And we spend 20 minutes just reading out our 1-star reviews because they are just the best. You know, you look down your reviews on Amazon and you're foolish. You're a fool to yourself if you do it.
Yeah.
But every so often you do. But the 1-star reviews are just hilarious. They are my favorite thing to read out. You know, I've enjoyed the Thorne novels, but this is a standalone book. So stand it alone in some petrol and burn it. 1 star. That's one of my favorites.
Oh, that's a good.
And you get, like you were talking about before.
I thought that was one of my better ones.
You get those ones that said, "This isn't my book; it's my husband's. I haven't read it." 1 star.
Right.
it's so ludicrous and preposterous that they're just fun to read.
Yeah. I thought I was particularly upset.
Oh, Barbara's waving at us.
All right, I have never read anybody's Amazon reviews, not once, not ever. It wouldn't even occur to me to go to Amazon to look for comments on books I'm reviewing. Why do you read them? I'm fascinated with it. Why as an author would you even read them?
It's like why do you
bite a mouth ulcer if you've got it? Sometimes you just can't. We really shouldn't be talking about Amazon when we're doing an event. When we're doing an event for Poison Pen.
No.
Shame on you.
I didn't even think about Amazon. I mean, that's part of the deal. But
I think if you're feeling really bad about yourself, you know, it's a great way to make yourself feel worse. But also, I think, you know, I don't really look at reviews for books when I buy them. But if there's a 1 star and there's 6,000 reviews, I always think, what's going on here? It must be everybody in this guy's high school really hates him.
Yeah, but you have to have gone there in the first place in order to even find them. I guess that's sort of my question is, why are you even there?
A lot of times readers are really sweet because they'll say, this is what I posted on Amazon. I thought you should see it. Or they'll bring it to your attention.
But they'll bring the bad ones to your attention.
Yeah,
there's always that real passive aggressive one where you'll just get an email that goes, shame about the New York Times. And you go, and you're like, what? And then they'll helpfully provide a link so you can see how much the New York Times hated your book or whatever it is.
And particularly if you're a woman, they'll be like, oh, look, your author photo, it looks like you've put on a little weight.
My one experience with it, a pair of really wonderful authors, I had an extra reading copy. And so at their event, at a preceding event as a marketing thing, we agreed that I would give away my much treasured and very valuable advanced reader's copy to somebody in the audience. I can't even remember what the event was that led to that. So in fact, this guy won it. And the next thing we know, he has not only trashed the book on Amazon, he's given away the entire plot. I mean, you know, it's like scroll and the whole bit. And I thought, you know, I'm never doing that again. You can't trust people, you know, to even, I mean, I don't care what his opinion was, but I think it was completely unfair to ruin the book for anybody who bothered, you know, to go and read it. And so I've become extremely cautious about, I don't know if Goodreads is any different. I don't know if any of these, I mean, the only thing I care about is what I think when it comes to, you know, selling books and reviewing books. So I strip away everything that comes from the publisher. I throw it away and I never go look at, you know, any sites or anything because, you know, I don't want my take on a book influenced by somebody else's opinion. But I often think, you know, that authors must have some sort of self-flagellation going on.
Yeah,
if they
we
wouldn't
be authors if we weren't anxiety.
Maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. I'm also going to say while we're here, I've traveled extensively in Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden, and Lapland. And I have uniformly found everybody to be lovely.
You're just not with the debauched ones like Mark.
I just think they're too cold. I think they're too cold to bother to be horrible.
A bunch of Brits on a wonderful train trip from Stockholm all the way up through Lapland and around, and then over to Narvik, Norway, and back down around. And the only thing that I took issue with is whenever we got to a city, Rob and I and another couple, we always went looking for a really decent restaurant. All the Brits ate pizza the entire time. You know, I don't know if that's like a national thing where, you know, it's the closest thing to pub food you can get, Mark. In Norway is the local Italian pizza.
Well, the English are not known for their sophisticated palates, are they?
Hey, let's not go there. Oh, come on, let's get back to the book and stop slagging off British food.
All right. Back to Alice Armitage, who I thought was a really interesting character. Were you know, did you channel Wilkie Collins at all in this? I mean, I always think of, you know, The Woman in White, where this poor woman is incarcerated against her will. whatever it all is. And there's a more recent book that's come out, the name of which I can't remember, about a woman here, I think post-Civil War or something, who was put in a mental institution just because she was inconvenient, or I can't remember, they wanted her property or something of the sort.
Right.
But Alice isn't there because somebody did it to her, right? Isn't she there?
No, Alice is there because, I mean, I should probably just summarize the plot in a nutshell. It's set on an acute psychiatric ward. There's a murder that takes place and it's investigated by Detective Sergeant Alice Armitage of the Metropolitan Police. The only problem being that she's also a patient. Now, the reason she's there is that she suffered a sort of debilitating bout of post-traumatic stress disorder after something horrible happened to her on the job. She exacerbated that with drink and drugs, became psychotic and was sectioned, which I guess is what you call committed. So she's on this ward, she doesn't want to be, but then this murder kind of gives her a chance to sort of prove herself, even though nobody else in the place is taking her seriously. They don't think she should be doing it. They don't. And she says right up front how unreliable she is. She's hugely unreliable. She's either just coming down off medication or just taken medication. You know, her memory's shot. She gets things mixed up. So it was fun to write. And all the characters in there, I wanted to give them all a story. And I guess some of the stuff in there that I promise you, the stuff in there that you think this is preposterous happened. The more bizarre stuff in there is absolutely based on fact and things that were said to me or that were said to my friend, or, you know, there's some really, you know, you got to have a very dark sense of humor to work in one of those places, that's for sure.
Well, I felt that was really authentic because unless you've been in a ward like that, you don't really know. You can't duplicate the bizarreness, right?
No.
You can be the most creative person on earth, and you cannot because your brain is not wired that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a completely different way of thinking. I thought you did that really well, but let's talk about sectioned, because most of here in America, we don't really give people the luxury of being mentally ill. We tend to incarcerate them or, you know, and Reagan was great when he came along. He's like, hey, let's let all these people with mental illness, let's stop keeping them in homes. And I happen to have a supporter who gives me a lot of money and who owns group homes. So let's try that everywhere. And let's cut all the federal funding for mental hospitals, which effectively closed all these mental hospitals, right? Mm-hmm. So half that population ended up being arrested. And, you know, because we don't have insurance really, if you really have to be just really badly off for the government to swoop in and say, we are going to take care of you, or you have to have committed a heinous crime. So let's tell Americans who don't understand what section means.
Well, the system, I mean, essentially, it means when you are, there's no other word than forcibly, taken to a place like Fleet Ward in the book. And there are different levels of it. But at its most basic, section 2, you're for 28 days. I mean, you're basically taken to a ward for 28 days until you are no longer a danger to yourself or others. And you are taken care of. I mean, there isn't particularly any treatment at that stage, but you are taken care of and you are medicated. I mean, our system is clearly a lot better than yours, but it's still woefully underfunded. I mean, massively underfunded. And you know, the other thing that I wanted to reflect in the book, hopefully not in too heavy-handed a way, is that the ward that I visited, 4 of the mental health nurses on that ward died in the first COVID outbreak. 4, and there was not a lot of staff to begin with. Yeah. So you just extrapolate from that and think how many mental health professionals died nationwide, and that was just horrible and frightening. They're not nice places, you know. However much they're funded, they're clearly not nice places because you're dealing with an awful lot of people in pain. And as Alice says somewhere in the book, you know, being banged up with mad people isn't good for your health. It isn't good for your mental health.
Yeah. Well, also they're not believed, you know. Yeah. So if they do report harm or whatever, it could be something that's manifest from their mental illness, or it could be actually happening.
Right.
And the default is not to believe them.
Well, there's one story in the book, very brief little moment in the book, where one of the characters tells Alice that she was sexually assaulted by a member of staff. Not in this particular place, but another place she was in. And they just said, don't be a drama queen. Don't, you know, don't complain about it. Keep your head down. Don't make a fuss. You know, there's a lot of strange and bad stuff that goes on in these places, you know.
Yeah. Well, so because it happens in our prisons in California, there was a woman who was screaming all like for days, just screaming until she lost her voice. And she ended up taking her eye out of its socket. And they still didn't check on her. Wow. So that's because they say, you know, especially if you're in a very high security prison, they say, well, you shouldn't take antidepressants because you need to get used to it. Right. Yeah. You shouldn't have but even though our prison system is like the chief purchaser of antidepressants and antipsychotics. So it's just a really great way to do things. But that was one of the things I thought was really funny about one of your reviews, the London Times, blackly comic indictment of the way we treat psychological illness today. I thought, you know what? Come to America. You're living in the Ritz. There was another great blurb before we get more into the plot. Mark Billingham is the master of psychology, plotting, and the contemporary scene. So my question is, when Ian Rankin said this, how did he get all those words out with your balls in his mouth?
I'm shocked. I'm actually shocked that you think a friend and colleague would look. It's always nice when you get you know. It's always nice when anybody says anything nice, for heaven's sake. Yeah. You know, when it's somebody of Ian's stature, yeah, obviously that's great.
Well, but also we should point out, Ian doesn't just do that for anybody, right? No, there's some authors who are like yes to every blurb, so he's got to really believe.
Yeah, we all know who they are. The whole blurb thing is a massive nightmare. It's horrible to ask for them. It's difficult to be asked for them. And I know Ian has a policy now of simply not doing it, but he will say something nice on Twitter. And I tried that for a while. But the minute you put something on Twitter, within half an hour, the editor of that book will be onto you going, can we use that as a quote? So it might just as well be. Because you can't say, I didn't say it, because you've said it on social media. So, and you know what? My attitude to it is I was so absurdly grateful for the quotes I got early on, you know, from people I massively respected, that when you're asked by a new author, what does it hurt? You know, what does it hurt? If you genuinely enjoyed that book, why not say you did? Because that might mean something to that author, you know.
Well, absolutely, you have to give back. But I wanted, this is going to be like the last question because we're hitting our time limit here. That was the heart music. So you were in showbiz and comedy. So obviously you've interacted with addicts, people who have drug and drinking problems.
Oh yeah.
Maybe some authors, I don't know. We can name them if you like. So like, you know, I think a core component of the fact that Alice is untrustworthy comes from the fact that she has that, not just the psychological component, but we don't believe addicts, right? We always think that they're lying, that there's an ulterior thing. So what were you hoping to talk about with her? Because I thought you approached it really compassionately.
Well,
she doesn't have any friends, basically, right? She's pissed them all off.
I mean, I wrote a book a few years ago called Die of Shame, which was more explicitly about addiction. And it's something I feel very strongly about, that the closest friend I mentioned, who spent time on a psychiatric ward, was a hardcore addict for 30 years. And he's somebody I've spoken to about it a lot and whose opinion about it I respect enormously. We just treat addiction. I mean, I can only speak for this country, but we have such a crazy attitude to it. You should
have a war on drugs. It's been
punishing
fantastic for us.
It's the most ridiculous concept in the world, the war on drugs. You take a country like Portugal that, you know, a dozen years ago now, whenever it was, just said, you know what? We are decriminalizing all drugs. And there are people that went, what the hell do you think you're doing? Well, this is what they were doing. They lowered crime rates. They lowered the rates of addiction. They lowered the rates of HIV. All the stupid money that had been wasted on a pointless war on drugs went to creating jobs, it was such a success. such a massive success. But people just don't want to hear that story. They just want to go, addicts are evil, put them in prison. You know, it's so, yeah, I wanted to, there's no way you can't address that to a degree in a book like Rabbit Hole. But yeah, I think my attitude to the way the government treats addiction is fairly clear.
I thought so. I thought you did a great job, Mark. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
One
to
of your
sum it
better
up,
ones.
what you've done is written a locked room mystery with an unreliable narrator who's a police officer.
It is. Well, it's an airlocked room mystery because obviously there's an airlock involved. But yeah, I guess that's exactly what it is. With the most unreliable narrator you'll ever come across. And although the ending of the book changed so many times before I thought I decided who the killer was, then changed it at the last minute. Then almost after I delivered the first draft, woke up and thought of an epilogue that changes everything, and so put that in as well. So the book endlessly surprised me. So hopefully it will surprise those of you who read.
I mean, obviously it had to be a standalone since it can't be a Tom Thorne book. But what fun for you, you know, to stretch a bit and do something that you don't normally write, which I think is great. Karin does the same thing. She writes standalones like
You've got to do that. You've got to do that.
Be different.
But I absolutely loved it. 3 stars.
And on that note, Patrick, come and tell us whether we've had any 1-star reviews from the audience who are probably whiplashed by now.
No, everybody, actually, you've had a number of people, Mark, who've already read the book and are chiming in about how much they loved it.
Right.
I do have a few questions.
Okay.
Actually, you've just talked, sorry about the phone. You just talked a little bit about this, but Anne says, Mark, my favorite of your standalones is Die of Shame. Which standalone for you was the most fun to write?
Well, fun-wise, even though bits of Rabbit Hole were hard to write, I had a lot of fun because I was just with Alice. I was in Alice's head for the whole book, and I got to absolutely adore this character. I did an event the other night where somebody said, "What would you say to Alice if you met her?" And I wouldn't say anything. I'd just give her a big cuddle. You know, I just got to really, really like this character, even though she infuriated me and whatever. I loved being inside her head. And for those of you who like audiobooks, I mentioned earlier, the most brilliant act. You know, the audio producer came to me and said, "Oh, you know, I guess you're not doing this one." And I said, "No, this needs to be a woman." And they said, "Well, any idea of any actresses?" And there's a brilliant actress called Maxine Peake. And Maxine's was the voice I had in my head when I was writing it. She's just a brilliant actress. And I said, "Well, you could ask Maxine Peake." And she said yes. And she does the most brilliant job of bringing this character to life. So if you want to get an audiobook, I'm not sure how that will work in America, whether you'll still get Maxine or whether you'll get somebody else. I don't know. But
I don't know either.
I did enjoy writing this a lot.
Also, Karin, thanks a lot for what both of you said about the current state of mental health. I do have several friends who work in that industry, and I think your comments were spot on. Let's see here. Anne says, Mark, have you ever seen anyone reading one of your books in public or picking up one of your books in a bookstore? And did you approach them, telling them who you are?
No, never. I mean, I have seen it, and I've seen people like sitting opposite on the train. And I tell you why, because it's a writer called Jake Arnott. Remember Jake Arnott?
Sure. Yeah.
It was a wonderful first novel called The Long Firm. And he told this story that he got on a train about 2 days after his book came out and sat down, and the woman opposite him was reading his book. And he was so thrilled and so excited. First book, 2 days it's been published. And he thought, I can't say anything, I can't. And the train pulled out of the station and he couldn't stop himself. He couldn't. And he leaned across to this woman and went, excuse me, that's my book. And the woman looked at him horrified and went, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry. It was just sitting here on the table when I got on the train." And she tried to push it back towards him and he was going, no, you don't understand. And she went, "No, please have it back. I wasn't enjoying it anyway." So that's why you should never talk to anybody you see reading one of your books.
You know, it's funny, Mark. I distinctly remember you coming over very early on. It may have even been for Sleepyhead at the Poison Pen. Did you tour for that book?
It would have been Sleepyhead or Scaredy Cat. Yeah, it was one of the first couple of books, definitely. Yeah. Yeah,
I remember you doing an appearance here at the bookstore and having to do a phone in to a radio program late at night, and you were reading. It was great. I have a distinct memory of that.
Okay. You got a better memory than me, Patrick.
What's going on? What's going on with your band during COVID? Have you been able to play at all? Or?
No, we haven't played at all. We had a whole bunch of, we had a kind of small tour lined up, March, April last year, playing music venues, playing some proper music venues, the Shepherd's Bush Empire and the Queen's Hall, Edinburgh, and a whole bunch of shows. Obviously that was cancelled. We're hoping some of those will be reinstated. I think we're playing again in September. We've actually got a Zoom chat tomorrow night. We try and all get together once a month or something just to catch up. But no, we can't wait to be showing off again. So September probably.
Do you ever have guest authors? Like could Karin come up and sing backup? Or
I'm sure, I don't think I ever heard Karin sing.
I played the triangle in high school.
Okay. Well, there you
go. I'm not kidding. I played it. Yeah.
We've had well,
harder than that,
whenever we're at a book festival, which is quite often, we're playing in a book festival, there's one number we do where we go, are there any crime writers in the audience? Knowing there's going to be dozens. And when we always drag 3 or 4 crime writers up just to sing the backing vocals on Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones. So you just have these fine crime writers all just going, woo, woo. And the best one ever was when we played, in fact, at Harrogate a couple of years ago. And because we knew she was there, we said, are there any First Ministers of Scotland in the audience? So Nicola Sturgeon, who is, the leader of Scotland, got up and sang with us, which was an absolute treat because she's great.
For the audience who may not be familiar with this side project of yours, can you tell us who's in the band? It's Stuart Neville.
Stuart Neville, who is just a genius guitarist, and not just a genius guitarist, but a genius luthier, a maker of guitars.
I know.
And for my 60th birthday, 2 weeks ago, he made me, I didn't know about this until last weekend when I got presented with it, a beautiful handmade electric guitar.
Wow.
With kind of my name embossed on the headstock and just the most gorgeous thing. He made it. So he's a fabulous guy. Stuart Neville, Luca Veste, Liverpool writer on bass, Doug Johnston, Edinburgh writer on drums, and then up front, riding on the coattails of those 3 brilliant musicians are me, Val McDermid, and Chris Brookmeyer, just kind of showing off up front, really.
I actually have a really good question, maybe for both of you. Allison asks, do you ever get angry or frustrated or fall in love with your characters?
Well, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no because they're always a character. It's a sort of acting exercise. You're putting yourself inside the head of a character and being that character, and especially when it's first person. I'm walking into a room. What am I hearing? What am I seeing? What am I smelling? How am I feeling? But it's you. It's also you. You'd be getting angry at yourself. It's kind of a strange thing. I mean, I don't mind it when readers get that close to a character. If they want to send me CDs that they think Tom Thorne would like, I'm like, great, go ahead. But no, I don't think I've ever actually gone that far, because every character is the hero of their own story. Even the most repulsive characters I've written, I've tried to make them human and give them something that a reader can empathize with.
Yeah, no, I feel like my characters are real people when I'm writing about them. I know they're me, but also they're very different from me. So I feel like they're just outside of me in a way.
Do you wonder what's happened to them when the story's finished?
Yeah, I do. Or I'll hear a song that I don't particularly like, and I'll think that character likes that song. Yeah. But we should say, Mark, with all your side projects, Die of Shame also is the name of one of your sex tapes.
Any more available as an audiobook, Mark?
Sorry?
Is that available as an audiobook?
It's in Braille.
Die of Shame. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Sounds terrific.
Carl just said, did Mark just say Val McDermid is in his band? Yes, yeah. He did.
Yeah, there's actually photos of her you can find. She's like the lead singer. It's great.
Yeah. There's video evidence, plenty of video evidence online if you want to look it up.
And what's the name of the band again? The Fun
Loving Crime Writers.
Fun Loving Crime Writers. Yep. Yeah. All right. I think that's about it. But I just wanted to chime in also about Mo Hader. I appreciate so much what you both were saying. What a tremendous talent.
Yeah.
Patrick and I agreed that The Rape of Nanking was an absolutely stupendous novel.
Yeah.
So it is nice. Patrick is down in the middle of the bookstore because the air conditioning failed upstairs, and it's Phoenix in August. So for those of you who are wondering, that's Bill running around behind him, our store manager, and Julie, who's
Julie.
Yep. So it's kind of busy. Anyway, this has been a real treat. Thank you so much, Karin.
Thank you very much, Evan. Thanks for doing this, Karin.
I'll see you next time, Mark. Thank you.
You will. Thank you.
Indeed.
Cheers, Barbara. Thank you, Patrick.
It's really been a great pleasure, Mark. So could we remind you that we have copies of Rabbit Hole, US edition, and the UK autograph edition for Mark, since he unfortunately couldn't make it across the pond. It was the best we could do for you readers who like signatures. And we definitely have more copies of False Witness, Karin's amazing new book. And so, if you've enjoyed the talk, please support them by buying a book. We'll have a podcast available of this unexpurgated, unedited tomorrow, or possibly later today. And the video will live forever. So if you think you know someone who would enjoy listening or viewing it, be sure to tell them. So au revoir. I hope we'll see you again very soon. Bye, everybody.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Good night.
Hello. We hope you're enjoying our programs and podcasts with authors. We'd like to expand them, and your help would be appreciated. Please make a donation at poisonedpenfoundation.org. 100% of the proceeds will go to help connect authors with readers in this difficult time. Thank you.